Good afternoon. It's still morning with everyone. So, good morning. I'm so happy that everyone's back. We had a great time in this track yesterday, and I'm glad that there's a buzz about it. Not for the reason that, everybody was brilliant as speakers and there was a lot of interaction, but I think everybody was here because we all felt that this is probably the need of the hour. Vocational and skill driven education is something that we really, really need to be talking about and taking it forward. So I'm glad we not only discussed, there were action plans, and of course, to end it all, our speakers were absolutely brilliant. And the cherry on the cake was our audience was very good because it was very interactive. Everybody had a point to give. So I'm glad we had a great session yesterday. And we're going to have 3 sessions today. The first one, of course, Lakshmi would be chairing along with Anand Subirji. We stole, and then we got a free gift. Okay, a nice tall kattappa along with Subirji, and they'll be in. Yeah. I know. Oh, yes, I can say. So I'm glad. Now I'm not going to let him go if he's the one who attracts audience. And we'll be having some great session with Subirji. Then we have Neeta here, Dr. Neeta Bali. She and Sandeep Sethi will be in conversation. That's going to be the next one. And the last one is going to be the Adda. We'll speak about it when we do that. That's the end. And I think that's going to be also equally exciting. Over to you, Lakshmi ma'am.
Thank you and good morning, and thank you for coming for us or for Katappa. But you're here. Um, it's lovely to have you, Subir. And I always enjoy the 1+1. And I think we have had so many conversations over social media, and it's nice to have you, the face and the name together. Uh, Maheshwar's and Anand's presentation this morning kind of left me a bit shaken up. The demographic dividend to debacle, and then you see the statistics, and are we fooling ourselves? Because the topic that is given to us is kind of very presumptuous and a very, kind of a big thought that we are going to be supplying the skill and as if India is going to become the global capital. And are we fooling ourselves? Kind of a question that came to my mind that, sometimes we kind of imagine this very big scenario, and here I am coming, and as if the rest of the world is kind of paralyzed and waiting for India to deliver. And then today, that presentation, to some extent, bombed a lot of those assumptions. So, just to give you the first trigger point for you, I mean, you don't need triggers for discussions, but I just thought that, the 3-4 conversation that today we want to have is we know there is a skill gap. And also, again, when he said that after 22 years and up to undergrad program, we go through the schooling and go through the motions of schooling, and everything that they give us, we teach and they learn and we assess and they pass. And then, bingo, nobody is suitable for employment. And in this scenario, what are really some critical skills that we really think that we need to focus on for becoming a global skill capital? And the second question for you is that how are we going to navigate this? We seem to have fantastic white papers, framework, and curriculum framework, and the NEP is talking about it. And then even before it is published, yesterday I heard that, NCRF is going to be kept in a back burner. So is it like this, that there is a facade happening, that there is a frontline showbiz, like a puppet show happening, but peaches say, the strings are already detached. So I just want you to give some thoughts on it.
So, do I need to use the mic? Are you recording?
No, yeah, they are recording.
All right, then I'll use it. So, on the NCRF, I'll just mention something very briefly because I heard the Joint Secretary talk about it end of June. And the big issue they have is that a large number of students are registered, but very few entries are made. They also backed down similarly from a large skills program some years ago. And uh, they never said why they did so, but I think the real reason was that they couldn't get enough.
Is the audio good for you?
Can you hear me?
A little bit.
They didn't know that they couldn't develop enough instructors. You need a very large number of them, so it was not a deliverable program. In fact, Rudy Pratap Rudy, he lost his job. Rajiv, whatever Rudy, he lost his job. So this is something that is going to happen because I think the way we conceptualize the skills side is very limited and limiting. There's a lot of social stigma attached to it, as we know, because people believe education is to have social mobility upwards, and you're providing specific job-related, descriptions which are taking it the other way around down. So that certainly is an issue. But I think there are other ways of looking at it, and I want to talk about that. So let's say in a secondary class, a teacher says that we have too many books lying around in our class, and we need to create a bookshelf. And she creates groups among students whose job it is to identify and create 3 or 4 different bookshelves. Now think of all the process that happens. It's not as simple as it looks. What is the space we have? What are we going to keep there? What will it look like? Where will it be convenient or not convenient? They have to measure it out. They have to imagine it. They have to plan it. They have to source it. They have to identify materials. They have to see if it is environmentally sustainable. They have a budget to keep. And if they actually get the material, make it, there's a lot more that will happen. So the point I'm making is that the idea of skill is something that starts first with the mind, also with the hand, surely. So every time we look down upon skills, it is also because we do not see that there is the mind dimension to it. And in fact, so my thesis is that before you talk of skills as a separate thing, you should be talking of skills as part of all subjects.
Yeah.
Why is it not part of science? It surely is. You have to, for example, you have to create a small patch of an organic garden in the school garden. You have to cost it and see whether it is viable or not over a period of, say, a few months. You will be doing a lot of agronomics, mathematics, science, and actually using your hands. So you'll be doing so many things. So it's I think we need to take a perspective where we do not distinguish skills from academic subjects. And academic subjects are limited by not having those elements in them. And it's not something that starts at, right at the end in secondary. We think now the child is ready for it. It starts very early. And sometimes many things are not even seen as skills. Speaking well is a skill. Thinking is a skill. So is writing, reading, numeracy, etc. Counting is a skill. One of my favorite skill exercises is something I'll ask you. Can you name 7 similarities between a needle and an elephant? And also think what's happening in your mind as you're trying to figure this out. You'll feel some...
Yeah, it starts with probably the size or dimensions or
It's also revealing that why we are not able to do it. In a way, it's a very simple exercise. Class 1 kid should be able to do so. Okay, they are common. All right. Yes. Correct. They both. All right.
yeah.
But think of how you're using your mind.
It's not an uncommon way of doing it.
Yeah, and also I think
Yeah. What about the needle?
You got sharp.
Ah, okay. Right. They're both sure. So now, what you're trying to do, one, of course, you're looking at common elements, but you're also trying to look for a category that is larger than the two in which both of them will fit.
yeah, I mean that's what I meant
Yeah.
by starting with the first thing that comes to the mind is the difference, but then you've been given this challenge of shifting this mindset,
Correct. Yeah. So, so when you say both are on earth, both can be touched, both have a color, both can be seen, then you're going to the larger category. Now, this is something which you can teach children deliberately over a period of time. And it's a skill in the sense that, we teach only the other kind of skill of differentiating, but we don't teach this part.
Can you just finish this
All right.
conversation and then we can go?
So my point is, that we have somehow fallen into the trap of education as being about knowing and not about doing. You do things with your mind. You do things with your hand. And of course, the other way works very strongly because uh, if you're into that kind of thing, so many of our neurons are directly connected with the hand that there's a lot more nerve endings at the hand compared to any other part of the body, that the brain is affected a lot more when you do things with your hand, especially when children are young. That is why, in mathematics, they first talk of using concrete objects and then picture and then symbols. So there's a progression over there. I think really the point I'm making is that we have portrayed the whole idea of skills in a problematic manner. We see them as distinct from subjects. They may not be. And secondly, uh, you can have a very bad pedagogy for, say, maths. Like, just teach the algorithm, ask children to memorize, demonstrate things, ask them to follow. You can similarly do the same bad thing with, say, skill like carpentry. So when you get in a carpenter into the class and teach, you are not really doing skills actually. You're doing a very bad form of bad pedagogy because he's not a pedagogue. His job is not to teach. His job is to really do. And he will say that, do this, or hey, can't you hold it properly, and so on. So I think even our skills part is problematic because we don't have the appropriate pedagogy for it. We don't, for example, in the cupboards of bookshelves for the classroom example that I gave, there was a sense of relevance. Why are you doing it? You're not doing it because the teacher told you to do it, but because you're actually going to make and use it. So in learning, what drives learning is that sense of purpose that the learner has. The purpose has to be a purpose which the learner values. It is not a purpose which is out of fear that, oh, I will fail in the exam or because the teacher is pressing me to do it, but because it is something I really want to do. So when you do something like that, then you find that skills flourish both from the subjects as well as from what we specifically call vocational skills point of view.
It's interesting that you're giving this example of, let's say building a bookshelf in the classroom, and that you talked about the mindset. And I can imagine a lot of times students, while they would also want to go about doing it, a couple of questions that would really pop up is that who will do it? I think the mindset really decides. And oftentimes we all experience in the classroom that will this be included in our grading? So there's always this thing about what's the fruit that is waiting for me. Otherwise, is it even required? Is it in the syllabus? So Anand, how do you address this constant concern with is it required? And how do we legitimize it, or how do we rationalize it? Legitimize maybe is the wrong word. How do you rationalize it, and how do you actually eventually motivate that this skill is something required beyond the narratives of the scores and calculations?
And I think there's a whole bunch of things in today morning's keynotes that came out, right? I think one of the first thing is that schooling, education, learning, I think there are three different things that we need to recognize. Right? Schooling comes with an agenda, that particular school's agenda. If you want to do something which is, back to your original question, if what you really want to do is something where this becomes a skill capital or any of those things, you need to have a common agenda. All of the schools really need to have one agenda, which is life. Right? We have, at the start of the schooling space, we have taken life, broken it up into subjects, and we leave it there at the end of 12th. We're not doing the service of fusing it back into life and then letting the kids go on, right? Or drawn in, right? Yeah. Exactly. Which is where, and if you look at it, let's look at, let's say Subir and myself, both of us get into grade 1 at the same time, right? And today's scenario is that we go through the motions up to grade 9, and let's say at grade 9 a decision is being made. Subir is fantastic with his test-taking strategies. He really does well, gets all the necessary 90s and 99s. And I'm not doing that. So what is being done is he is then put onto a path which is 11th, 12th higher education. He then has the IITs and the your AIMS and your Harvards to support him further on what he is good at. Whereas I am put onto a vocational path, not because I'm good at vocational, but because I'm bad at academics. And I'm then being put onto that path without any support. They're saying that by you, so that from a schooling agenda point of view, the message is very clear. It's like, Anand, just get out of my radar. I can't handle you, I can't manage you, and you're not of value to my agenda.
Is that why we have gotten to this egg and chicken where our whole stigma related to the
Exactly.
vocational is that,
Exactly.
that vocational is not for the academically
Absolutely.
gifted or academically high potential?
Yes.
Almost a rejects of the system. And I see that also spilling into the classroom, that vocational is not for smart students.
Exactly. It also then it also then infuses common parlance. अरे कहीं के नहीं बनोगे, बस इसी ये carpentry बनोगे, या यही झाड़ू पोछा ही करोगे. You get it. It gets into your normal common parlance of frustration and all of those other things, right? But look at another thing. Even Richa, who runs the Maker Asylum, she was saying the same thing. They run a Maker Asylum with schools. And when they went to the schools and said, give us all your students, we'll do all of these things, the schools automatically picked their non-top shining students. Sorry. They said that.
Yeah, they don't need distractions.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Now look at another parallel universe where both of us again have gotten into grade 1. And from grade 1, we are learning age-appropriate skills, gardening, right? Garland making, bicycle repair, right? Let's say by grade 6, I know how to fix the lights in my room, electrical wiring and all of those things. So we are doing it every single year. And I'll come to that part later. But let's just see, this is what is happening. And at grade 9, same decision is being made. Subir is still fantastic at taking tests and scoring very well. I'm still not good at it. But the conversation now is a little different. They're saying, Subir, you go on with this path because you're good at this. Anand is fantastic with his hands. Just look at the way he's done his ceramic work or how he's done, making garlands and all of that stuff. Let's get him a path where he can then shine. Now here there's an issue of dignity. Both for the messaging to my parents is that we're sending him on to this because he's good at this, not because we want him off the radar. And then there's a support ecosystem that happens. Now today, again with the school, if you look at it, we say, oh, we want the community and we want the community. We do all these very cursory, namesake things that we bring in. Versus if you had skill right from grade 1, I'd bring the local garland maker lady to come in. And she's not supposed to teach me. She's just supposed to do her work. Right? So, and I'm not expecting her to be a pedagogue or, any of these things. So, while she doesn't understand SEL, she's not supposed to understand SEL. She does her work. And we do it. So, if someone just gives me one shot on my head, it's part of life. Let's deal with it. Let's move. She sings a song. Let's learn the song. And we make festivals. And there I can pick my mathematics, all tessellation patterns, multiplication, division, everything can be extracted just from the single act of making a garland. The stories that come from the fragrances and the kinds of things and the way, flowers were used for season, that all goes into my literature. The very fact of blooming, germinating, all of those things come into my sciences. That one common context where the teachers were situated and the students were situated is my basis for the rest of the learning. Now, this doesn't happen, because of which the skill is like, oh, we have to have one period for skill. I said, that's just not possible. Because that's, again, as I was referring in another session yesterday, that's the sandwich model, right? I have a layer of bread, and then I have my layer of tomatoes, which were maths, and then there was cheese, that was science, and so on and so forth. And now suddenly NCRT wakes up and says, oh, cooking is extremely important. So what do? We try to slap another layer. And the sandwich has become so big, I have to be an alligator by birth to be able to eat this kind of a sandwich. Versus, if you had said, you want to do sciences, वो साइंस वाला जो आपका जो क्यूकम्बर लेयर है उसको कुकिंग वाले चटनी में भिगो के रखिए और फिर उसको वापस आने में लेयर तो मेरा एक ही है पर दोनों मिल गए ना मुझे
yeah yes. But
so is it is it the same? Are you giving a solution to integration? What actually Subirji has been speaking about, that if you get these guys in right from the beginning, you're actually integrating it. Why do you need to separate them? And if you separate, that child is probably doing garland making, but is doing maths through garland making.
Exactly.
So that's what we're talking about.
Precisely.
So I'm asking you, is this a solution to the problem?
I would really say this is a mirror to the problem. Because what we have done is we have created the problem. And by holding up the mirror, we can at least prevent ourselves from creating the problem. We let this happen. So the cycle maker comes, or he's showing me how the pneumatic pressure, no matter how much of air you put, it doesn't come out. What is the principle there? All of that stuff is there for the teachers to synthesize and ask the whys and why nots. Right? They are the pedagogues.
Anand,
Sorry, yes,
I'm
yes,
really
yes,
going to, this guy has come from the teacher training track. I think he just
he
must
has
have,
to-
yeah.
So
I'm wondering about,
on the
yeah.
on how to deal with this whole thing, I think I'm going to say things which are going to sound vague to you, but systemically they are being attempted and they can be done. So the first issue is to deal with this whole hierarchy that we have and starting with whose knowledge is knowledge. A tribal child knows a lot about animals, trees, and for example, when I lived in a tribal village, somebody knew how to cure animal diseases using herbs. But this person's children went to school and didn't want to learn that anymore. So we have,
The weaver's child has just stopped even talking about the weaving.
so I think the NCF provides, and even the NCF 05 did, but NCF 23 specifically talks about bringing in local knowledge in a strong way. So, for example, a truck driver probably knows more about the geography of India than your geography teacher does. The local ironsmith knows about how to separate metal from impurities. Farmers know a lot about weeds, for example. So, in every person in the community is knowledgeable, not only engineers and others. So, how do we bring that knowledge into the classroom? This has been experimented with, and it's quite successful. People do make use of it, but we have to treat people with some respect and dignity for this to happen. The other part is also on the other side to recognize the depth of knowledge that exists in ordinary crafts. For example, weaving is a lot about coordinate geometry. So if you start looking at things differently, you will find that they are knowledge systems in their own right. So Indian knowledge systems are not only Vedas and so on. It's all around us, and that is something to look at. There are things that we really value, but we don't assess. For example, we want children to be kind, to collaborate, but we don't do an assessment for it. We don't put so maybe you can say that is why it doesn't happen. But should it not be assessed, or should it not be included just because it cannot be assessed? What do we do? That's a call that we have to take. So there is right now an effort. I believe it's a clumsy effort. This holistic progress report card, we're producing 25-page reports, is complicated, but it's a beginning. And I think that we'll have to work very hard. Some states have rejected it. They're saying it's not practical. All that will happen. But since thought is being given to bringing in those aspects that were not looked at earlier, to that extent I regard it as a positive thing. It's beginning. Also on the credit framework presentation that the ministry made, they said that we want to have the vocational skills be treated on par or as equivalent to academic ones. And that's they concluded in the typical government way, but it was a good image by showing Eklavya and Arjun being equal. So I think the point is that the National Credit Framework is another thing that could make use of it. So basically what I'm trying to say, yes, I think all of us are aware of the issue. And the issue is very much that of the class structure of our society. Do you know when the mobile phones became cheap, a lot of people in gated communities were upset that their maidservant also has a phone. That is the connection that we have with the issue of vocational skills.
So I'm just going back to this big claim that we could become the global supply for the whole skill requirement of the world, and I can see that where even the HPC talks about compassion, empathy, which probably are also going to be critical requirement for, let's say, countries that are really going to look at elderly care, or probably with the medical healthcare and all the ancillary healthcare support systems. But I'm still grappled with the idea that how are we going to actually really scale up? Because I think the countries with a lot of anti-immigration policies are saying that no, we are now going to build our own ecosystem of skill supply. Sorry, we don't need. and if you come with yours, and we will probably not acknowledge it, or we will have to reassess, and generally always value your skill supply as a lower, like in banana going from India is always lower quality than coming from another part of the world. So how are we actually really looking at this claim that we are going to be this demographic dividend with wonderful large number of youth population and highly skilled? How are we still grappling with and considering what just now Anand spoke about? It's not happening at the school level.
It's pretty evident that it's a castle in the air. We are trying to put the foundation below it, and it's not only about scaling. I think it's also about deepening uh, the standards for skills are very different in say Western countries compared to ours. Some decades ago, in a women's skilling program, were being taught to masonry work, and they took that work up, but they were constantly losing money, and we found that it is because they were not measuring very precisely. So they were being paid for smaller areas than the work they were actually doing. But that measurement is a very precise thing. This applies say to dairy or to so many areas. So it's in the minute details that our skilling is not working, and it works well in say handicrafts where we are the best, I think, in the world. Certain say textiles, for example, no comparison. But in many of the other things, for example, plumbing, electricity, or whatever, I think it's in the standards, in the precision, in the detail. Because in our context, due to poverty or whatever reason, we are able to accept quite a lot of low quality stuff. Andaza, right? So, and it doesn't work in everything. And certainly in the context where if you want to be global, you cannot be global with these standards or these lack of standards. So, if we want to scale, I think the first thing we need to go is to go deeper rather than wider first. We need to have that kind of scale, and also to scale. I keep coming back to this big issue. It's a problem in teacher training. We have 1 crore teachers. You need about 1.5 lakh high quality trainers in order to change the country and lift it up from low levels of learning across. For that, you need a minimum of 300 world class resource persons to do that, right? The same applies to skilling. So just as we have given so much emphasis on trying to create a high quality curriculum, we need to give that much emphasis on creating a higher quality conceptualization of each skill. The curriculum is not enough. The standards is what really matters, right? So, for construction work in the US, for walls, the thickness, everything is very, very precise. You cannot, if you budge, you lose your license, right? So you can't send people from here and hope to compete with them over there. So you have to raise the quality. So we have to go deeper in that sense. We have to produce a large number of resource persons. And I think Maheshwar was so right. We are not investing. Our ITIs are really in shambles. We have very poor.
Yes.
So and of course that is also an effect of the low status that this sector has. And lastly, I just want to mention this again. I know it will sound very odd, but we see skills as not having an intellectual component at all. This is a problem. It's a seriously problematic notion. It has so many other. For example, people look at how people will use it, where it will be touched, or they decenter and perceive it from other people's perceptions, and so on. And there's a long list of things I could go into, but we need to appreciate that there is that element of thought. It is not that dumb-looking work that you think it is. And when the standards come in, it becomes even better.
Yeah. I think that whole paradigm shift in the way that we perceive skill development. Do you want to add something? Yeah.
So another thing is right, and we're talking about what is it that we need to do. So here's a controversial suggestion because we don't have much time. So I'm just going to come straight to the point. Every school that establishes itself for academic purposes must have an adjoining school for vocation. If we really have this as a simple mandate, right, for every single school, that if you want to have your standard K-12, there has to be an adjoining vocational school that you show equal investment and intent in. So you then notice that this whole flourish of schools that are there would slowly then in parallel have much better quality ITIs, for the lack of a better word, right? And given that both of them have to succeed, this thought process will then start. Until it's forced upon, it's always somebody else's problem.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 I think we can. Yeah, we can throw it open. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me come and give it to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we too had this issues when we started the school at Indus, and how to make this vocational training a very successful venture. We wanted to find an incubation platform. How do children react to it? So we created a community school within the campus of the main school, giving 2 acres of land, and we had children from 9 villages coming in. Then we told, we have 4 houses. Each house was given, selected by the children to do what they can do. So one house picked up, or an house setting up a science lab. The second house picked up a kitchen. Third one was a library. And fourth was a 5-acre land which we had vacant to cultivate. So entire thing from grade 11 downwards, because 12th, because of the examinations and all, we wouldn't touch them. 10th and 12th, we didn't touch them. But right from grade 6 to 11th, they did the preparation, the planning, the fundraising, the involved the parents, and you won't believe that entire project was for 1 year, complete year. They did not do anything else, just this. And they set it up. So every year, till date, we are 20 years down the line, that community school is flourishing so well because of the interaction of these children. We set up computer labs, we set everything by children, and we have today from that school, community school, 1 doctor MBBS. We have 3 jockeys who are riding at the so-called Vijay Mallya stables, and we have 4 golfers at the national level, because we allow them to use the facilities of the entire school. And that school with 500 children today is one of the top schools in the country now, which has been. So this is the best way to put up the children into the vocational training, give them the entire thing. Thank you.
When we make it
Any-
in
any-
parallel, I think that's really the way to go forward.
Yeah. One more thought. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. This is not a question, but what I have experienced in my school days. I'm from Loreto, of course, way 40 years back. But from classes 6 to 10, every year we had to take 2 of these activities, it was said then. A choice was given between 2, and we had to choose one. 6 months you continue with one, and then 6 months you continue with the other, whichever. So in the entire span, from 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, so we learned 10 of them. It was like knitting, etc. We made booties or caps, and then you can give it to a Cheshire home, sort of, or you can take it back home, whichever you want. Now, later I have realized, then what came imbibed, we did not understand, but our kinesthetic ways were much better. And still today, I continue to teach my students what I learnt in class 9th, which was string art. And I understand, even someone had given me an offer that if you teach it to the outside, the women, they can do a what we say, a small earning for themselves. That did not materialize, but we had it then. What I'm trying to say is, why is it fizzling out now? That's what my only thing is.
Thank you. Should we?
Yeah, I think we can, but what is switched off? Oh God.
Who's paying for quality? Who's paying for good quality skill? I mean, a good quality mason is not being identified from a bad quality mason. A good quality carpenter is not being identified. Good quality electrician is not being identified. Plumber is not, and nobody is ready to pay. Everybody is looking for the cheaper quality. And you are paying cheap, then you are already judging, to your point, socially low, right? Where are we going? Where? I mean, this is the true reality. You know, we don't pay for good teacher versus bad teacher. You know, for any skill per se, this is the thing.
It's a social issue, it's not so much an educational issue.
Absolutely.
But then the education as a tool hasn't even changed the perception over
So see,
decades.
education ends up. This is the problem. We think that education will change the world, but it's the world that changes education
Correct.
more.
Yes,
So you get rated according to the subject you study. If you studied the arts, then you are a little lower in rank. You studied skills, even lower, which is very very funny. It reflects in teacher behavior. Do you know there is research to show that mathematics teachers smile less than other teachers? Because what I don't know what.
And teachers who are being assigned to teach grade 10 and 12, the board exam years, are they're very very elite, and they are very special, and there's a very high responsibility and highly reliable. So there is a lot of self-assumed importance that one is given. Yes. No. Yeah. Here.
And then we'll probably just take one question.
Okay. All right. So, when we discuss education, very often we talk about how should learning happen, what should be included in a subject, so on. But I just want to mention to you that the educational debate has moved in stages. And in the 80s to 2000, the big debate was how do children learn. But from 2000 onward, it became how do teachers learn. But after 2010, it has become how systems learn. And when we say system, we don't only mean the system, directorates. We also mean society. It really is a question of when society itself starts valuing certain things. You start suddenly one day you start valuing coding, and then AI comes and it is no more necessary. So it's the schools are falling into that trap. And I think we need, as educators, we need to work seriously on, I don't know what term to use, consumer education, societal education, beyond, people must value what is really worth valuing. We value all kinds of stupid, unnecessary things. And we don't value what really matters. And that is affecting us as a nation in terms of our ability to do skilling, in terms of our ability to succeed globally as well.
We'll just take this one comment and we'll end this. Yeah, you can take this. Sorry.
In fact, one of the other systemic issue that I think briefly Subir you have touched upon is many of the people are going into that bandwagon. We are after the jargon. So from a systemically, if you look at it, life skill curriculum is now becoming a focus, whereas life skill need to be part of the subjects. And when we used to train the teachers, we used to say, stop teaching English, start teaching them English linguistic skill, or rather, if you say in general language, linguistic skills. Similarly, I have done a lot of research in life skills in my area. And one of the things when I asked the principals and teachers, what are the 3 or 4 most important life skills? It's in Emerald Journal as well. They came out with critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, and someone also mentioned self-awareness. This is the 4th one. But when we did a study about 1200 plus students as part of the research, we found empathy as the critical one, which has got high correlation with all the other, minimum at least some 5 or 6 critical skill. So it is without any life skill curriculum they are getting developed. So of course it varies from school to school, but if you are able to integrate it, and all of us, there are so many school leaders here, instead of going into the bandwagon of 99.99%, can we start focusing on the teacher development to focus on the life skill in the subject, not separate from the thing.
Yeah, I think we will all nod our heads, and when the board exam results come, you see what happens in the social media.
I know.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think
Yeah.
there's this whole thing of intent and action.
Yeah.
I think at all.
And I
Yeah.
think this we've been talking so much about integration. You
Yes.
said it so beautifully, and so did Anand.
Thank you,
And I think
Subir.
the word silo comes the maximum
Yes.
in NEP, and yet we only talk about skill, this.
Yeah.
All we talk about multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, this, but we all are just sandwiching. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Subirji.
Thank you, Subir, and thank you for allowing to be borrowed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, and we don't even have a scarf to give you.
Yeah.
I got one yesterday.
We had the whole day with you.
I know. So what are you doing? We have that adda thing. Maybe you can come back to us after
maybe
about
I will
half an hour.
Yeah, please
Just
come back,
join
please,
us.
yeah.
It'll be very open and
Yeah.
it'll be good fun.
Yeah.